Well, this should be interesting. This comes straight out of comicbookmovie.com. James Gunn perfectly explains why his approach to DC characters can't please everyone. Very interesting. Where is this coming from and where is it going? A never-ending conversation regarding superhero movies is how comic accurate they are in terms of both aesthetics and story. Comic books and films are different mediums, and so not everything that works on the printed page may necessarily translate well to live action. Very true. Sometimes significant changes to a character can be beneficial. True. A good example of this is the MCU. If one were to compare some of the heroes in the franchise to the source material, we'd often see they're not exact copies of each other. Very true. Yet, when things are handled well, they just work. Very true. Another example of that is Heath Ledger's Joker. He is not the Joker. Absolutely not. However, that take on him worked with fans very well. So much so to the point where some fans say he's the greatest on-screen, big-screen Joker we've ever seen. Personally, for me, it's not him. It's Jack Nicholson. But to each their own. Some people say you could never see a better Joker than Heath Ledger's Joker. No, you could. I think that Joaquin Phoenix's Joker was as good, arguably, was as good or better than Heath Ledger's Joker. And to tell you the truth, the best Joker we've ever seen is animated. Mark Hamill. Period, point blank. There is no better. Don't argue with me. It is what it is. Now, such discrepancies between comics and live action often bring up a debate on what the ideal version of a character should be. It should be the character that works. It should be the character that works. I always say when in doubt, go with the source material. Make changes when needed. But if you make something that is fundamentally sound to who the character truly is, at least the fans can't say you didn't go comic accurate. You know what I mean? It may not have translated well. Some things may have gone left or right. However, it's like, that's the character. Something about it didn't come off right, though, you know? But if you go way off the beaten path, they are going to annihilate you for not being comic accurate, you know? How they should look and how they should act and how their backstory should play out. Because of this, it's pretty much guaranteed that no matter what superhero is adapted for the screen or how be it from Marvel to DC, they will without a doubt have their detractors. Now James Gunn has given his take on this. Okay. Inspired by YouTubers, go read some comics with Jenna's video, quote, "We need to talk about Brainiac." The director took to social media to explain the problem of people assuming that the version of a character they favor is the ultimate representation of said character. In getting his point across, the director fully laid out why it's impossible for his vision to please everyone, and he shouldn't focus on that. Now, no one's vision is going to please everyone's, but I'm just going to assume on this as a director, you want your film to please almost everyone. You know, you want it to please a huge chunk of the fandom and not just 51%. It's got to be 70, 80, 90% of the fandom. That's what you usually would want, I would think, you know. Maybe I'm wrong. Now, says here, quote, "Great video. Yes, the Brainiac stuff is cool. Don't read too much into that part of me reposting. But what I love is talking about the fandom flanderization and how many fans believe some aspects of a character is the only true vision version, usually dependent on what they came upon. They first came upon the stories. Let's see, here's a whole lot of quotations. I'm trying to figure out how I want to read and how that potentially diminishes our enjoyment of the stories outside of what we expect. And there is a perfect perspective on the dilemma for delivering an adaptation that will please everyone. As James Gunn is fully aware, his vision will never be able to connect with every single person in the audience, and neither he nor any other filmmaker should strive to achieve such an outcome, because doing so would not lead to the best results. Well, that's not true. That's not true. You want to. I personally believe that you should strive to be as faithful as possible and make something that everybody's going to love. Nolan's a good example of that. I think he did a great adaptation of Batman, and it worked. Not everything worked. I've always had issues. Like, Batman Begins didn't grab me. And it actually, I decided to revisit it like a year or two later to watch it. And it started to grow on me, actually. I didn't like how they shoehorned in Two-Face. And, there's other things, like you look at Bane. Bane wasn't Bane. Bane was not Bane. But people really liked it. Like, Tom Hardy's portrayal, the voice specifically. The voice specifically is not something you would have thought. There's no way in hell you thought when you were going to go see this, especially as a Batman fan, that he was going to talk like, "Hello, Batman. Yes. Come here. I'd like to talk to you. My name's Bane. Yes, that's my name." You didn't think he was going to talk like that at all, but it worked. So these choices need to be carefully made. I think that the filmmakers should strive to please the fans and be faithful to the artwork, to the comics. However, make changes when needed that help the translation from those comic book pages to the silver screen work perfectly. That's what you should strive to do, because not everything from a comic book page is going to work well, transposed over into the big screen. Like, I get that. But they want a hit on their hands, don't they? At the same time, you want your artistic vision to be liked and, brought into the fold. So to speak. You want people to like it. You want people to love it. You want people to cherish it. You want to make money off of it too. So it needs to please most of the fans. You can't never say to yourself, "I'm trying to please everybody." It ain't going to happen no matter who you are. You're not going to please everybody. Nolan didn't please everybody. You know what I mean? People love Nolan for what he did with Batman, but he did not please everybody. Okay? Zack didn't please everybody. Gunn didn't please everybody. Even the Russos didn't please everybody. Okay? However, one thing I think that especially Nolan and the Russos did, they pleased most of the fans. I think Zack pleased most of the fans. I think Zack pleased more of the fans than Gunn did. You know what I'm saying? And I think Gunn may have pleased most of the fans, but not by much. I think it was more divisive than any other Superman we've ever seen. Like, I think he pleased to like 55%. You know what I'm saying? If that. I just don't feel like it was huge. Maybe 60, maybe? I don't know. Let's see here. What else does it say? Going back to the MCU, where Iron Man was announced, a common argument about the project was its perceived futility. After all, who'd pay to see it? Marvel, in turn, turned those conversations out. The studio didn't wait for the audience to say that they what they wanted. It showed them what they were going to like. If the studio had paid attention to the noise, Iron Man would have never come out, and things would look a whole lot different. Yeah, well, Iron Man was never a super popular character, and they took him and definitely did something with that. So they made the right decisions, and I don't think there was a lot of noise when it was coming out anyway. You know what I mean? There wasn't a lot of fan chatter about it. Like, no, yeah, I just don't think it was like that. No, that is the strategy the DCU should employ, with the understanding that the people aggressively insisting on how bad the DCU should be handled, on how the DCU should be handled, or opposing every decision just being made just for the sake of hurting the franchise, are a minority in the grand scheme of things. Are they vocal? Yes. I don't know if they're a minority. I think they're around half. I really do think it's like a half and half thing with this, man. Yes, but so is any other. Yes, but so is any other fandom. The truth is, superhero fandoms are simply not large enough to carry comic book projects to profitability. Well, yeah, you always have to. Every subculture, you know what I'm saying? It's like you have to. What you should shoot for is to please the fans and the normie and the general audiences. Okay, that's what I think. That way you have the respect of the fans, and that respect of, because the fans are hardcore, and the fans that are hardcore are going to bring the family and friends to the movies, and the people that just kind of know about the character, which are the normies, if you can satisfy what their base knowledge of the character is, I think it'll work. And I think that's what he did with Superman. I think he did. It's just that I don't think he did it enough to win over the overall public on it, because the Superman fans are definitely split. They're divided on it, period. But I don't think it would have been a hit. They're saying they lost $42 million on it theatrically. Maybe they'll make it up with toys and everything else. But I just don't he didn't do enough, I don't think. And that comes from the general audience, the people, the general audience, the people who, for the most part, still think Superman will appear in Avengers Doomsday. No. The general audience isn't that dumb to who Superman is. That Tobey Maguire and Tom Holland are playing the same Peter Parker. And the best part, well, yeah, they may possibly think that. The best part about that side of the audience, they're largely unaware of any sort of online discourse, which is true. Ultimately, the only deciding factor in the fate of the DCU is the interest of the general viewer. That's true. And I have more to read here. But I think that said enough. You know what I'm saying? It is true. It's just that I don't think he, pleased enough. You want it to be a runaway hit. Tim Burton didn't bring us an absolute exact Batman, but he did a damn good job, and he did a good job of pleasing the audience, the general audience. You know what I mean? Batman was a hit. Batman Returns was a bigger hit, even though it was darker and everything. I think 89 is the better movie, though. Out of the two. A lot of people think it's a bad movie, but I understand why they think it. But it still works for me. It still works. Anyway. Post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. If you enjoyed my thoughts on this. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and share. 10 million subscribers.